Man like Mark Sullivan, worry yourself. Stay tuned for the thrilling episode. Woo!
A positive mental attitude can clear away all obstacles which stand between you and your major purpose in life.
This is the Snowboard Project featuring Mark Sullivan and the Bead. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.
Welcome back to the Snowboard Project. I'm Mark Sullivan.
And I am the Beav, and we are here coming at you with our second installment for Andy Week with, who do we have?
Andy Wright.
Now, I've heard Andy Wright's name a bunch. I've seen it in print. Tell me a little bit about Andy Wright and what he does.
Well, Andy Wright got to start as a sponsored rider coming from Utah. He was a sponsored rider for Nitro. Okay. And then he started a zine called Medium Magazine. It's the size of t-shirt you wear, medium.
Okay.
And so he did that with Jared Eberhard for a number of years, and then he went full bore into snowboard photography and has been a senior photographer for Transworld Snowboarding for about 15 years.
A pretty normal kind of transition from like a pro snowboarder kind of going into photography, but pretty rad that he made it kind of to the top, say like at Transworld, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's really been at the top now for 15 years. People don't even remember the fact that he was a sponsored rider back in the day.
Right. So what's he doing now? Where's he at?
Well, he lives in Portland. He has a couple of buildings that have like rental units, like apartments.
So he's a slumlord, a photographer into slumlord. I know how that goes.
I think he was a photographer first, and he was successful enough in photography to become a slumlord.
That's amazing.
Yeah, photographer turned slumlord, so check it out.
All right, coming at you right now from the Snowboard Project,
Andy Wright. Okay, today I am joined by Andy Wright. And Andy Wright, you probably know as a senior photographer, 16 years of senior photography at Transworld Snowboarding, but his career in snowboarding goes much deeper than that. So we're going to get into some of that. We're going to get into some other stuff, and then we'll probably talk some shit too. So Andy Wright, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks.
And now you live in Portland, Oregon.
Yes, I do.
And you came from Utah originally, though.
Yep, grew up in Utah, went to school there, went to college there, did a lot of snowboarding there, just needed a change of scenery.
Right, and now you don't have to give 10% of all your income to the church.
Nope. Got out of that one.
No, but that's kind of a joke. But anyhow, Andy actually, I think I first became aware of Andy when you were a pro snowboarder, aspiring. Were you actually a pro snowboarder, like paid to snowboard?
Paid to snowboard, officially a pro snowboarder. But I mean, that word was thrown around pretty loosely back there in the late or early 90s.
Right. So for Nitro, right?
Nitro was my main sponsor. I'm actually claim to fame was I was one of the first riders on Special Blend. I had their first ad ever.
Really?
First Special Blend ad was me. And they actually called it Switchbacks before they called it Special Blend.
So you were in the Switchbacks ad?
I had the Switchbacks ad. Then when they switched to Special Blend, I got the Special Blend ad.
Really?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So what was your best trick like back then? What was like a money maker trick for you?
Money makers back then, God, it wasn't so technical because it was more just about, I don't know, technical trick wise. I mean, I could do a J-tear, so like in the half pipe, but like
Terrario.
Yeah. A J-tear, a backside 5 in the pipe. I had an aspiring pipe career for a brief moment, but I don't know, trick wise. I mean, I don't even know if I could even do 720s back then. I could do 540s. Maybe that was my big move. Was backside 540.
So, did you get to travel? Did you see the world, or did you kind of see all of Utah, all of northern Utah?
Yeah, definitely got the tour of Utah. But no, I would say yeah, it took me as a professional snowboarder. I got to go to New Zealand actually as a professional a few times. First trip to Alaska was as a rider, no camera. So I went to actually Thompson Pass, your favorite place, and got my first ride in a helicopter that helicopters up there used to, I mean, there was an organized heli operation at the time, but then there was like unorganized ones too, where a guy just showed up in a bubble copter on the side of the road. And I'm sure you've been up there enough. You've probably heard these stories, but we're kind of checking out the airfield where they were running planes out of that place, and they would land those on the glacier. And we kind of had our name on the list for that. And we're just waiting on the pass, and we heard rumor there was a guy just down the road parked with his bubble copter, and he would take you basically anywhere you wanted to go. I think it was like $40 just for a run. And basically the copter was, super small. He sat in the middle. You sat on either side of him. It was a 3-person, and that was my first run. I was with
no guide.
No, absolutely no guide. So
did you have an avalanche beacon?
Yeah, it definitely had that kind of stuff for sure. We weren't like idiots,
But
coming
did you
from
know
Utah.
how to use it? Because like the avalanche beacons back then, they weren't like directional. You kind of tells you which direction to go. You had to like really know how to use it. It was a lot less technical. Did you know how to find somebody?
Well, I mean, fortunately, I never had to find anybody, but I definitely had taken an Avi 1 course at that point. And so, but I'd never, and I still haven't ever had to find anybody in a burial, and that's me knocking on wood there. And I hope that never happens. But, it's funny because that first beacon I had up until probably like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and I found before I upgraded, and it was the
earpiece.
No, it wasn't the earpiece, but you looked at it and it just kind of the lights lit up more if you're going in the right direction, and it was like, it wasn't even the same system they use now. But anyway, I was so fast with it because I was just comfortable with it. But now the frequencies all changed, and it was kind of getting to the point where I was a liability in the crew because my frequencies not match up with anyone else. But anyway, going back to that first trip to Alaska, which is kind of a cool story, it was like I somehow ended up in that helicopter. I'd gone up there with my friend, Drew Hicken, who he's a founder of Salty Peak Snowboard Shop, and he was also kind of on Nitro at the same time, but it was really his dream to go up there. But we ended up in a helicopter, and it was J2 and Megan Pischke at the time, now Megan Porcheron, but and those two went up first, and we came up behind them, and then it was Hosnick was there too, and so Hosnick was taking photos. That was before he was really doing the video thing as much. We took one run. Hosnick snapped a photo and somehow ended up on, I think, the cover of his calendar that year. He used to put out a calendar every year
Vertical
called
Addictions.
Vertical Addictions. Yeah. So that was my first trip to Alaska as a rider. I did another trip to Alaska as a rider, and I think I mentioned I went to New Zealand a couple times. I went to Rick Scranton. Funny story about Rick Scranton is when we showed up there again, like this wasn't for like, we came with another photographer, but we got there literally the day after Ingemar did the air.
Right, the most famous hair, like the backside hair, like on every cover of every magazine.
Yeah, so like the shot heard around the world, and hopefully there's some people listening that still like remember that or have done some research. I think they just had that 20-year anniversary a few years back of that, because it was like maybe 90.
You should have been here yesterday.
Literally, if there was ever a you should have been here yesterday moment, but we had no idea. Like, even everyone's like, oh, dude, yeah, like, hey, what's up, you guys? You're just getting here now. But I mean, like, and people said, oh yeah, Ingemar went huge yesterday on this quarter pipe, but like, you could never even fathom it in your mind how big that really was till you saw the photo come out. And so you go to Rick's pretty late in the season. It's probably May. It's usually Rick's time, but 4 months had passed before we saw the photo, because it wasn't like a magazine got published. It was like that September, late August, when all the magazines started dropping. That was cover, and I was like, oh my god, that was what happened. Ugh, good thing I didn't know that at the time, because I probably would have really been kicking myself. But 4 months later, 3 months later, whatever, you're like, it kind of worn off. But imagine if someone would have showed me that photo that day, like, look what happened yesterday, I'd have been like, oh man. But then again, it wasn't like I was going to go do an air next to Ingemar anyway. I was there to snowboard, so I probably would have been like, whew, he would have really made me look bad. Maybe it's a good thing I wasn't here.
You'd be like, I quit.
Yeah,
I quit.
It wasn't there like, I wasn't there like to take photos, but I actually used to always travel with a little point and shoot camera and stuff. And even at that,
Yashica T4, was that your rig?
you know, I had a T4. Those are good. I used a Pentax. It was called the Pentax UC1. It was also a fixed lens camera, and it was a little snappier than the T4, like the autofocus, and it was just as sharp. So the only thing it didn't have was the spy scope. But I do have some really cool photos from that trip, and I think I actually might have even have had like an SLR, not a DSLR, because that was pre-D for digital. But and I took on that trip just to mess around with, because I have some cool photos. I look back on that trip, and so, you know, chances are I would have taken the shot of Ingmar.
You would have had all those cover shots, basically.
Well, not all, but I would have contributed. I think he had 7 covers.
Yeah, insane. Like,
Yeah.
that's probably the most published photo for like one time, one moment, right?
Yeah, easily. But there was a rider there who actually had a disposable camera, Derek Height, who was a Burton rider at the time. And he had a disposable camera. And I remember there were so many snowboarding publications at the time that all just, I mean, if you were going to be thought of as a legit snowboarding publication in that area, you had to have that on your cover.
Right.
And so, like, there was the magazine called Stick, and which was run out of, like, you know, Ray Gun and Santa Monica, like a music arty magazine. But anyway,
Yeah, Scott Klum was the guy behind that.
yeah, for sure. And so they couldn't obviously get they didn't have a guy there shooting, and everything else, everyone's photo was spoken for. So they put Derek's disposable camera photo on the cover. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Probably the only disposable camera photo on the cover of a magazine.
Yeah, and so, and like, you know, I'm not super into like, oh, you got to have a really nice camera to take really nice photos, but I mean,
You should have something better than a cardboard box.
it's barely usable, and they put it on the cover just to.
But that was kind of like really artsy, if I recall. So maybe they, like, you know, put some weird typography around it and made it seem like it was like intentional.
The whole magazine was just weird typography. I think that was the whole purpose of having that mag. But no, it was a great mag. I mean, especially looking at it now,
If you were dyslexic, it was really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not really reading it anyway. You're just looking at the photos.
Yeah.
And I think, like, you know, I think that's where Zachar got his start. He was like their photo editor, and got to run a lot of his own shots and did cool stuff. And so
Right.
it's a good magazine. I'm sure I have them in a box somewhere around here.
Right. And so I guess, you know, we actually have some common roots in media. Do you remember that?
Absolutely, man.
Snowboard Core. We both were like, I was like, I don't know what my title was. What was your title there?
Wait, I don't know if did I work for Snowboard Core?
I think you did.
I did.
Yeah, you did.
What did I do? Did I write things?
I think you wrote and probably shot photos. Probably a little bit of everything, and probably had some embellished title. Like, I think I might have been a senior editor, even though I just like contributed a little bit.
Okay.
Essentially, but they needed people who had like names and who had been involved with the sport. And since you were a pro rider, you definitely had a good title.
I probably wrote some things as well, because I definitely wasn't taking publishable photos at the time. And
I wasn't either, but they were still being published.
Yeah. Well, I remember because Rob Mathis was their photo editor and a good friend of mine, and so
you were definitely on that masthead.
Well, I was also on the cover.
that wouldn't stop you from being in the masthead. It was like these are early times, right? This is before we had like real media integrity.
Yeah, that was my only cover of I guess a national magazine was of Snowboard Core.
Right.
And so that's like when you threw me for a loop. But no, I thought you were going to talk about the zine days. Was that pre-yeast infection?
I'm not sure. It was about the same time.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to you about the zine days because, you know, we both actually made zines. You made one in Utah. I made one on the East Coast. But tell me about how like Medium came about. How did that what was the genesis of that zine? Because it was more than a zine to me anyway.
Yeah, it was a megazine. That was our little subtitle. No, so I had a lot. Well, so first, I guess I should say I had a job at Kinko's, which do they even call it Kinko's anymore? It's like FedEx Kinko's, whatever.
Yeah, it's like a copy shop, basically, photocopy machines.
So I had access to all these copy machines, and I usually worked the night shift alone, or actually friends would work with me. But so anyway, we used to make skateboard zines there, and it was all cut and paste. So you'd have a photo, and you'd basically like maybe make a copy of a photo to get you the right size, paste it and get your layout all done, and then make another copy. Anyway,
Right, it was all 1-to-1 though.
Yeah, it was 1-to-1. It was fun projects to do, but the quality was terrible because of you're doing so many generations on a photocopy. It barely looked like a photo in the end. It kind of looked like a copy of Stick, actually. But
You're right. You're like, we could go national with this.
Yes. So anyway, there at the time, it was kind of like, besides my interest in snowboarding, I somehow, when I worked at Kinko's, I got put in charge of all their computers, and this was right in the era of desktop publishing was becoming the thing of a consumer. Like, I took graphic design in high school. And it was like, letters, like typesetting, actually like setting type in place and stuff that was crazy. And so they put me in charge of all the computers, and I had a friend who actually worked on computers, and he did really cool stuff. So I learned all these programs that were available at the time. And so then I had all this like energy to like, I want to take my zine to the next level. And I'm like, let's do a snowboarding zine, but let's like kind of make it legit, and we'll use these like computers. I didn't own a computer at the time. We can come in after hours, use the Kinko's computers, and like output all this stuff and make it look kind of professional, because I actually kind of had aspirations. And once I got into the desktop publishing thing, it's like, what, I want to be a graphic designer. And so I was in school at the time. I was actually studying computer science, which, back then had nothing to do with anything cool on a computer. It was more like how to program a switchboard for like AT&T to make long distance calls, something like that. It was like complete
computer
crap.
program coding.
But anyway, I was savvy at computers. I was like, I could find my way around a computer, and I knew what I kind of needed to do, even though none of it was really coding. But so we messed around on these computers, and I was like, man, this is really cool. I think I would maybe want to be a graphic designer. I should maybe change my major, which I never did because I was almost done with school, and I was like, too much work. But anyway, we're like, let's make this magazine, and we'll probably be able to make it for free, because obviously we can just copy when no one's around, and there's no cameras in here, no one's counting the paper. So we put together this first issue, and it was like, it had a lot to do with just being able to like have an output for like this creative end of wanting to design. And then the other interest in my life at the time obviously was snowboarding. And so I was just like, I was in Utah, and the scene was exploding. There was
there any advertising in the very first one?
Yeah, so we did local advertising. We did like shops. I don't think we had pulled anyone in nationally, but we just, there was several snowboard shops,
and because you weren't paying for the printing, it was pure profit.
Pure profit, yeah.
Wow.
And then I had access to like, as trying to be a aspiring professional at the time, I worked with a lot of the local photographers. And so I'd be like, hey, anything you don't, if you have any extra photos, maybe you could, I'm just doing this little pet project. And everyone like, sure, man, no problem. So I was getting hooked up with like amazing photos of like, Utah had great writers at the time who were like coming up. Like our first cover was like Jason Brown, who was like the hottest dude at the time. He was like the new kid on Burton. And there was, we got some cool photos of him, and we wanted to show maybe, not just like guys like Jason who were blowing up nationally at the time, but we were like, there's a lot of other guys here too that deserve some attention as well. And we kind of were watching the big media, so to speak, come in and start to cover Utah. They'd kind of ignored it a lot in the late 80s and stuff like that. And all of a sudden everyone was kind of starting to figure out Utah was good. And so we're like, man, I don't know if, kind of felt weird. All these out-of-towners were coming in and not so much hijacking our scene, but kind of just maybe leapfrogging over the guys who had been here. And it's like when it's your scene, you always know it's like that guy's just as good as anyone else, And so we were like, we're gonna showcase our local guys and show how good they are. And so that was kind of motivation for doing it as well too. So.
And so who else was involved with that?
Okay, so the other half of the mag was my best friend, Jared Eberhardt, who actually went on after we did Medium. He went on to art direct for Burton and Forum and
Genius.
I mean, Genius was true. I think it was his Genius plan.
It was amazing, actually. Yeah. I love the branding behind that.
Yeah, so he did everything from not just only their graphics, but I mean, he was like running creative director. He had a lot to do with their videos and stuff like that.
How did you divide up the responsibilities? Because it was a two-man team. How did you divide up the responsibilities of like photography, design, writing, ad sales, distribution. There's a lot of different little moving parts to making a zine or a magazine.
Yeah, for sure. And it was kind of fun just figuring it out as we went along. So it was like I was a little bit more on the writing side of things. I actually wasn't taking any photos when we first started it. And
you did all the computer programming.
Yeah, well, and so we both wanted to do that. We both basically only did it because we wanted to design things. We just had all, like I was saying, this energy to like, I want to like make a cool layout. Like if I was reading, like I was a nerd. I subscribed to like Macworld magazine and like anything I could find, we would just devour design magazines. And so we were just kind of like, it's kind of like you read a magazine and watch a video and you want to go out and do the same trick as a guy on a skateboard or a snowboard. It was like, I want to do that same trick with some type. I want to drop a shadow or, or something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, he would, so we both designed, we both wrote stuff and we both kind of sold the ads and things like that. So it was just a little 50-50. Yeah, it was never really weird or awkward. So, but it was a lot of work, but it was fun. It was really well received. We ended up doing 7 issues total. So after we did our first issue on the photocopiers, it went so well that we actually got some like companies that wanted to advertise with us, and and it didn't hurt either that like I was, like I said, I was trying to be a pro snowboarder at the time, so it's like, I just hit up my sponsors, right? And they were down, and then like and just our friends who were sponsored, we hit them up, and everyone was down. There was so much money. It was truly the boom gold era of snowboarding. Was that era? It was like people literally couldn't buy enough ads, and it was to the point where it's funny to think this time even exists where you could kind of even choose your advertisers, because there were so many snowboarding brands. It was such like you remember, it was a fly-by-night thing. Like people were like, I'm going to get rich off snowboarding, and so like all these companies would come out, and you like running a magazine, you'd be like, you know what, that company's kind of whack. I don't really even want their ad in my magazine, because I don't really want, and their design's terrible. What are they? They just like desktop scan their photos. It looks terrible. It's going to drag our company down. So it was cool to even be involved in snowboarding that era, because you could actually, it wasn't hard to sell ads.
Oh, hey guys, Beeve here with Sullivan, and we're talking about Patreon. I know, it's one of those things that we gotta throw in there, but check this out. It's because of people like you that go and get on the internet and go to Patreon and support us for as little as what, $2 a month?
Yeah.
It's people like you that help us do this.
But people are like, no, it's free. It's a free podcast,
right?
Steve. We don't need to pay for this. We can get it for free.
Yeah, I know.
The way that we're going to tell these independent stories is by having people support us. Right now, we got about 108 people supporting us. Not a lot.
108?
108.
Still pretty rad.
It is pretty rad, yeah.
There's 108 people out there that are supporting us on Patreon.
Yeah.
Right on.
With your support, as little as $2 a month, we can continue to push this ball downfield to continue to tell these real stories in snowboarding.
So how did you learn how to like get the professionalism, like drum scanning and like making sure the photos reproduce well and that the printing had the right line screens and all that stuff? Like, how did you guys learn like those like nitty gritty skills that made it look more professional maybe than it was warranted to look?
Well, it's just like the whole desktop publishing revolution, kind of like the magazines that were coming out, the Macworlds and things like that, were just had article after article about that kind of stuff, because it was talking about the software that was coming out and how it was supposed to fit into these kind of systems. So we just self-taught, but we just like obsessed on it and read anything we can. And this is like obviously pre-internet era, maybe AOL was around, but it wasn't like you could just Google how to do this kind of stuff. So we just wanted to do it, and we just figured it out.
Wow. Because I remember looking at that and I was designing a magazine on the East Coast. I had no background in that either, but I guess I missed the Macworld connection because I looked at Medium and I was like, wow, this is just, I'll never be able to be this good. And, you know, it gave me, I really had an appreciation for good design, but I was never able to just put all those pieces together. And I looked at Medium and I was like, this looks better than any of the magazines, better than Transworld, better than Snowboarder. It looked to me like you guys had put more thought into the layouts, into the concepts that were in that. Was that the perception you found from most of the industry, or what did people say about it?
I mean, I think because you were laying out a magazine yourself, you probably appreciated it a little more on that level. It's kind of, you know, I think everyone loved it, but I don't think they dug too deep into the design. They knew it was like, it's aesthetically pleasing, but they were like, oh man, that's such a cool use of like Garamond and Cooper bold right here, something weird and kind of nerdy stuff like that. But I mean, like I said, that just goes back to the, like, that really was a passion, was wanting to be a graphic designer. And even after Medium, for sure, that was what I like. I never thought I would actually even going to be a photographer. I kind of pursued the graphic design side of things because Medium kind of opened a lot of doors for me. Because I guess the design was so well received. Is like we would hustle ads, and then people would, you know, and sometimes it would be like I was saying, people had bad ad layouts, and we'd be like, all right, we'll let you advertise in our magazine if you let us lay out the ad. And so then you're kind of opening a door because you're laying out an ad
and you
for
had
like a brand
design accounts basically because of that.
Yeah, exactly. So you're kind of like coming in the back door with design accounts, and people would see the ad you'd lay out and they'd be like, this is way better than the guy we're paying to do it. They're like, could we just pay you to do all of our ads? And so we kind of parlayed, especially Jared, but you know, myself too. We each had our clients. And
right.
So
who were your clients back then?
Let me think. I mean, I definitely did work for Special Blend and Forum. Those were like the best, or not Forum, for Foursquare. Yeah, those were like the better accounts. But like, I mean, there was just so many of those weird fly-by-night companies, you know.
Yeah,
would just like.
You made some money doing that.
Yeah, I made some money for sure.
Yeah,
and so then I guess that's a good way to talk about how the photography thing came about, because honestly, I remember, you know, being at the computer a lot of late nights, waiting around for some, like, you know, maybe I'm waiting for a scan to come back, but mostly I was always waiting for a photographer to send in the slide so I could take it somewhere to get scanned and finish the ad, which was already 2 weeks late. And I was just like, man, maybe I could take some of these photos and then I wouldn't have to wait around for this guy, and I could probably sell the photo on top of the design work too. So like a lot of these companies were just so desperate, like I said, just to get their ad out. I could be like, oh, hey, so I know you're waiting for whoever to send you their photo in, but check this one out. I have one of your guy, because you sponsor.
I'll have it done tomorrow.
Yeah, you want one of your guys who are like 40 team riders back there, and people had super big teams, happens to live here, and I have a photo of him. Would that work? And they're like, yeah, sure. And then I'd be like, oh, cool. Well, it's only gonna be like an extra however much for the ad and the photo. I'll cut you a deal. And so that started to go really well too. Right. And so it was kind of like,
did it become more lucrative than the snowboarding part of it?
Well, like the professional snowboarding part.
Yeah.
No, that was like, I mean, that kind of became obvious quick that wasn't going to happen. It was
right,
fun.
You design
cool.
one ad, you get more than a month's salary. Basically, you spend 2
well,
hours designing an ad.
I mean, it was never as fun as going out and trying to snowboard, but I think it was more in the case of just the talent that was coming up around me in that era. You know, it was pretty realistic. You know, you think you're hot. Can you swear on this?
Yeah.
Hot shit. And I was like, nah, okay, but who's this kid I'd never even heard of? He's ripping super hard. Or this kid. And it was like, you know, this is the era that, you know, Jeremy Jones and JP Walker started appearing. And I was like, all right, I got it.
Writing's on the wall.
I need plan B.
Yeah. Okay.
So I parlayed that whole, like, you know, the magazine thing into a design thing and then to a photography thing. And I was kind of balancing those out. And then, I ended up, I don't know how it happened, but I was like doing a lot more photography, and then I got hired on. One of my first big breaks was I got hired on to shoot all the photos for M3, Millennium 3 Snowboards, which was like a really rad company there at the end of the 90s. It was kind of like the other Forum or whatever. So like if you
the answer to Forum,
yeah,
basically.
so it's kind of like the Rolling Stones maybe were to the Beatles. So
right.
Yeah, so Forum were being the Beatles, and this was kind of like, you know, the other alternative. So I got hired on to shoot all their photos. And that was mostly just because they wanted to hire the foreign photographer, but he was too busy or foreign wouldn't let him.
Mathis
yeah,
or something?
Mathis for sure. And so they took a chance on me. And then I ended up, I was already good friends with Mikey LeBlanc, who's on the team, and I became really good friends with Blaze Rosenthal, who basically ran the whole situation. It was kind of his brainchild. So I shot their photos for like the first year, and they had a design company actually here in Portland, or a small
So were you in Portland already?
No, I was in Salt Lake still at the time. And so I was like, oh, this photography thing's really cool. I still didn't fully believe in it, that it was actually could be a job. And so I was like, but hey, what if I started doing your, design as well? That's kind of what, then I could take all the photos, and then I'm always with the team. We could talk about graphics, ads, catalogs. So then I became their creative director. So I was doing, like I just said, I was laying out all their snowboards for like 3 or 4 seasons, and
the graphics for the boards, everything.
Yeah, and I was a kind of art director, so it's like I was given a budget to go hire artists and the stuff that you would do. I mean, I would do some graphics myself, but it was mostly fun. So I was running that gig, and then when they went out of business, I was like, it was kind of like the photography thing. It just was really doing well, and I was just like, well, I guess I'll take a chance and I'll just try to be a professional photographer 100%. Right.
Is this digital or analog photography?
Still analog.
Okay.
Yeah. So, digital didn't come really full bore. I mean, this was until 2005, 2004 season was when digital was going on, and this was like around 2001 that they kind of tanked. And I'd been giving photos. I'd been shooting for M3 so much, so I've been giving photos to magazines all over the world, and I had to kind of develop this relationship with Transworld. And they'd actually hit me up a couple times about like, hey, do you want to be a senior? And I was like, I that's really nice. It's kind of a dream. Can't believe you're offering me this, but I really like what I'm doing here at M3. And so then M3 went out of business, and I was like, hey, I'll come work for you guys.
You still got that job opening?
Yeah. And it was cool. So yeah, that was that was 16 years ago, going into my 17th year as a senior photographer at Transworld.
Okay. So let's talk about what's changed over those 16 years. Obviously, the size of the magazines, the stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of changes. Analog to digital. Where do you want to start?
I don't know. I mean,
what's
I guess
the biggest change that you've seen?
The biggest change, probably you named it, is just the size of the magazine, which, it isn't unique to a snowboarding magazine. It's just media in general isn't consumed on paper anymore, obviously. So, but that is the biggest change. I mean, when I first got hired on in those years when I was first really contributing, it was like, it was like Bible. It was like the magazine came out. It was so thick, like 500 pages. I don't even know the page count. You probably know better where page count's
230, 240. Probably 280.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a couple inches thick.
Yeah.
Like you could like break the binding on it if you opened it up too like quickly in the middle. So, I mean, that's sad that that's gone, but I mean, it's just the way, and you can just adapt and accept things the way they are.
So was it more lucrative because you're selling these photos to run in magazines and in advertising? Were you making more money as a photographer back in those days when magazines were in their heyday?
There was more opportunity to make money for sure. Like, I'm kind of entrenched in it right now, so I still have opportunities, but there's not many for like people who are coming up now. It's not impossible. You can carve your own way, and figure it out. But back then, before it was all online and stuff like that, it was like a company would buy a photo to run an ad that like sat on the shelf for 30 days. So that's like photos worth a lot more when they're getting 30 days out of it, not just 30 seconds in somebody's feed. So obviously prices have had to adjust because of that. And so
it's all volume these days.
Yeah, it is volume, and it sucks because it's changed so much, but like it just doesn't have the shelf life or the impact I feel like that it used to. It's like, I think I read a thing recently that in 2016, I don't know if there's data for more recent, but 3.5 million photos were shared every day.
Wow.
Just shared.
Right.
So those aren't even the ones that were like taken. So people are taking way more photos. Those are the ones that just got passed back and forth or posted, I guess.
Wow.
On social media.
So it's become way diluted compared to the past.
There's just so much content. It just doesn't really have, the impact that it used to. I mean, people still appreciate good photos. Obviously, they stand out. They're just like,
So what to you makes like a good photo? Like when you see a photo that you've taken, when are you like, wow, I can't believe I got that photo? Is it the composition? Is it the action? Is it the lighting? What are the things that make a good photo to you?
All of the above for sure. Yeah, I mean, like, composition's key. Obviously, you need to be in the right place to show it in the way that you wanted to or the way you saw it. And then, you know, lighting is what really makes it kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, good action, or at least good style. It doesn't have to be like the biggest, most scariest thing to me, but it's just something like with good style or looks fun, things like that. I mean, it's hard to like, there isn't an exact formula, but those are all elements that contribute and stuff like that. But that's what's kind of fun, is it's not an exact formula, or if it was, you just, you know, write an algorithm to do it.
I think they're trying to. Don't give them any ideas, or you're going to be out of job.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Nothing would surprise me at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So, but there's more to really being a photographer than just composing it and getting the light right and the action right. I mean, there's also this aspect of kind of knowing the backcountry. A lot of it's shot in the backcountry, so you kind of have to be familiar with that. And you were saying earlier that you knew the avalanche beacon probe. Are you also kind of like a leader in the backcountry? And then also there's also the sales element. How do those things like come into balance as far as being a professional photographer?
I think all of those things you mentioned are key. Like I feel like 10% of my job is actually pressing the button to take the photo. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so much of it is the planning, making right decisions on where to go or who to be shooting with or what days to be going out, what gear to bring. And then the prep, you know, whether it's like making sure you can handle yourself in the backcountry, you know, you have to have your snowmobile operational, maybe be even slightly in shape, although I've been kind of slacking on that one lately. And you know what, it's a lot of hustle. And so, you know, and then building jumps takes a lot of energy, and then we're always building jumps, or, you know, human powered missions into the backcountry, or even in the cities and stuff like that, knowing how to get away with stuff that you shouldn't really be doing, because it's really, you know, it's everything we shoot, even in the backcountry, is not necessarily legal. It's never permitted. And
have you ever been arrested shooting photos?
Not like arrested and booked, but I've definitely been ticketed for like trespassing and been threatened and stuff like that. I had to actually fight a trespassing ticket in Denver. I've never actually been I've never had anything stick, so I've always beat the rap.
Okay. So let's see. So you basically lived through this change in media, change in photography. You know, the rise of social media, that didn't even exist when you became a senior photographer.
No.
Where's it going to go from here? I mean, videos and magazines were everything, and now it's like social media and daily video clips, daily photo. Where does it go next?
Man, if I had any idea, I'd invest in that company, because like literally, it's hard to say. It'll have to go somewhere, you know, for sure. And it's like, and just because, you know, magazines aren't giving people the fix they used to get, they're still getting their fix somehow. You know, people still seem to be interested in snowboarding, even in this world where there's so much competing for their attention. It's like it kind of really makes you think of how easy we used to have it when there wasn't really that many radical, so to speak, things out there to choose from. And now it's like a kid today, it's like, how does he even choose what to get into when it's just like he's being hit from all sides? I kind of felt like when we grew up, we would kind of choose our thing, and that was our tribe, and we joined that clan, and you felt like a sense of identity, like with these are my people, you know, and that, and it's like, it's hard to even relate to that with kids now. And I mean, maybe that has a reason, you know, contributing factor to why snowboarding sales are down, but I have my own theories on that too.
Okay, what are your theories?
Well, I think that it's too expensive to go snowboarding. Yeah. I don't think the gear has changed much in price to you since we did it.
Not really.
Like barely, minimal, you know, the cost of a setup, it was.
Or you could buy last year's stuff like at discount closeout or whatever.
Yeah, but even like new off the shelf, I feel like it's barely risen to what we were paying full price back when we started. But dude, lift ticket prices, they're absurd.
Yeah.
Absolutely absurd. And I feel like the whole business model of the ski resort is kind of driving it towards this whole like it's like country clubs. It's like exclusive places for rich people to go, and they're really.
But they also have like the Epic Pass where you can buy this like $600 pass that's good at like 20 resorts. I mean, doesn't that kind of fill that gap?
But that's also like that's helping for people who have already decided they like snowboarding. They've already made that investment. I guess it's really hard entry now, like to get in and just dabble in it and to try it out to see if maybe it's your thing. You know, you're talking like hundreds and hundreds of dollars between. Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, even if someone gave you equipment just to go buy the lift ticket, I don't know what they're going for at Vail these days, but I think Whistler last year was up to like $150 or something.
I think Vail hit like 200 maybe.
Yeah.
For one day, one person, one day to stand in a lift line, by the way, for half the day.
So it's like, I get it. If you know you love snowboarding, yeah, you go buy the Epic Pass. But if you're just like, it's as far as getting new users out there or to like, you know, a lot of the friends I grew up riding with, excuse me, you know, they're not in maybe a position to buy a season pass. You know, they're, you know, paying a mortgage, raising a family. They just want to go a couple days a year. And so it's like they're priced out of the market. And I just think that the whole business model of the ski resort where they all are like making their villages fancy as like destinations for shopping and dining. But and the pay for that, it's like the cost is like the higher lift ticket prices and things like that. Whereas like, I'm perfectly happy with just a basic mom and pop resort without any really too much amenities, but just keep the prices down and things like that.
It seems like, though, it must to some degree be successful because they keep doing it and they keep raising the prices. And it's like when lift tickets hit $100 at major resorts, I was blown away. Like I never thought it would get there. And now we've hit 200.
Yeah.
I mean, in peak season, you know, at major expensive resorts.
Yeah, I just feel like they're cannibalizing the industry from the way, and I don't know. I feel like these resorts are more about like real estate projects too than they are on the actual like the snowboarding experience. Like they kind of just throw some lifts up so they can sell some condos around them, and that's where the real money's made. So maybe that's what's like making it worthwhile. They have to make the base lodge and all these things look fancy so people will want to buy the condos and.
So would you buy a condo? You're a professional. You snowboard all the time. Would you buy a condo at a ski resort? And which one would it be at if you were to?
I would probably if I could, you know, if price wasn't an object, I would want one at Whistler.
Yeah.
Because it's just the most awesome mountain in North America.
Have you been to Revelstoke or?
Yeah, I've been to Revelstoke. It's great. I think Revi maybe it's just a little too far to travel to, but I just don't think it's as consistent as Whistler.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty rough around the edges, and you have a continental snowpack, not a coastal snowpack.
Yeah, too. It's a great mountain though. It's super good, but it's just half the mountain's usually like the bottom half's not usually rideable. You know, it's like pretty bad. Even though it's a lot of vertical, you usually have to download there and stuff like that. So
yeah,
you know, Whistler's only like 6-7 hour drive from here. I can work from there. The Airbnb market is quite lucrative.
Do you own a condo there?
I don't own one.
But if you did, you would Airbnb.
Yeah, I've thought about it, but you can't get lending as an American up there, so you'd have to buy it outright. And the real estate prices in that area are absurd. You know, Vancouver's like insane prices, and I know Whistler's not far behind. But
yeah,
you just said, where would I want a condo? So for all those reasons, Whistler would definitely be the place.
So where are your like favorite resorts aside from that, like worldwide? Because you've been all over the world snowboarding now for almost 30 years. It's like, or 30 years really. It's like, what are your favorite places to ride? Well, you can go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, my favorite place is and probably will always be the home mountain of Brighton in Utah. Mm-hmm. And it's still. I have so much fun there. I usually get there once a year. My family still lives in Salt Lake, so go home for Christmas sometimes to see them, and if the snow's good, do some riding. So I love Brighton. I have had some great times in Europe at many resorts there. Saas-Fee is an amazing resort. Lox is insane. Sonnenkampf is so super good. And then, you know, Japan, super fun. So Revelstoke even had a couple good days there too. So I don't know. I don't do a lot of ski resort stuff, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
We're usually backcountry, so I don't get to sample the ski resorts as often as maybe I would like. But those definitely come to mind.
So do you have like a state-of-the-art snowmobile or helicopter at your disposal?
Well, I have a snowmobile and it gets the job done. It's pretty laughable by today's standards, but
What is it?
I have a 2008
Rev.
Yeah, Rev 800, whatever, some crap. But it's funny because it was like, when it came out, that was like top of the line, and now it's like it's still decent in my book, but like the stuff that people are writing now just makes it so they can go places that I actually don't really. I wish we weren't going there because it's pretty scary stuff to go there. So
especially when you're on an 08 Rev and they're on a 2017 174.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
But yeah, no. So I have a snowmobile that gets the job done. Nothing fancy. I'm not a huge fan of snowmobiling. It's strictly for work, but it gets me to the places I need to go.
So you don't enjoy kind of a powder day on a sled?
I can't imagine ever going snowmobiling for fun. It would strictly have to be a work thing or a scouting mission, which if we weren't shooting, we were just out looking for stuff to shoot the next day. I don't know. It's just not my scene. But that being said, I've had some really fun days on snowmobiles, and it's taken me to some of the most amazing places that there's no way we could ever have gone there otherwise. So, but maybe I've never just gone out and free ridden on a snowmobile because it's like down day. It's either good and we're shooting or it's a down day and we're resting from all the shooting. So I haven't given it a fair enough try, but I mean, I know you like to snowmobile and go to Alaska, but you're accessing terrain to ride and stuff like that. So I've never really experienced that end of it. I guess I was thinking more in terms of like just going snowmobiling.
Because you always have 50 pounds on your back when you're going snowmobiling. So obviously it's not that fun.
Yeah. So, but the new sleds, I will admit, they're pretty fun to ride. So, but the helicopters aren't as, like they used to be. It's harder and harder to get into a helicopter these days just because budgets are less and less. Yeah. But it seems like I still manage every year to do one heli trip. So.
Yeah, to me, it's like they're semi-obsolete. I mean, it's still like a wicked fun, but it's like it's also, fun to have gold teeth, I guess. I don't know. It's just something that's kind of superfluous when you can get there with a snowmobile for $20 and it costs you $200 to do the same thing in a helicopter. It's hard to justify.
Yeah, but let's say you had limited time and you wanted to have the epic. Like I only have a week this winter to have the most epic time and whatever. You had some money and your friends were doing well and you went on a heli trip. You're not going to have that experience sledding. Yeah,
there's a learning curve to sledding. You can't just jump on a sled and get right to the zone.
Yeah, and so in the heli, I mean, like it's not so unaffordable. Like there's places where it's like decently priced.
What's going on over there, Beeve?
I'm just angry.
Why are you so angry?
I'm just an angry snowboarder.
Oh, come on, Beeve. You're not that angry. We should have called Kinger and have him cheer you up. Or better yet, we should just look at our Patreon page and see if anyone is supporting us this month.
Yeah, no, let's get stoked on snowboarding,
right? Yeah, I'm actually stoked all the time.
Let's get stoked all the time.
On snowboarding. Yeah. And you know how we're going to do that?
By not being angry.
No, we're going to do it by telling the real stories of snowboarding and not having advertisers influencing us. And so normally like in magazines and like social media, there's advertisers, people like Burton or LibTech or whatever, but like part of the message then that you're conveying is their message. And you're kind of like carrying the water for these brands. And so we don't have to carry the water for anyone. I'll carry your water, I guess, Beef.
You already did earlier today.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
Yeah, no problem.
So go to patreon.com/The Snowboard Project. We have different levels. They're outlined there on our Patreon page. Please support this independent voice in snowboarding media. Where would you go?
I would go to Eagle Pass.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely, and that's
drop
not like
a plug right there.
That's not a paid for plug at all, but like it's crazy, man. The experience is like really good there, and that they fly in any weather, and they know the terrain. They'll make sure you have a good day. I mean, personally, I think Haynes is the best place to heli board or whatever. I hate calling it heli skiing.
You mean heli shooting heli from heli?
I mean, just seeing Haynes is amazing, but it
Yeah.
takes a lot of things to line up for Haynes to be like, you know,
Yeah.
good. And it's not like, it's still affordable. Like Haynes is cool because it's not like some fancy lodge that you have to
Right.
stay in. And that's why Eagle Pass is affordable too. You can just stay in town. You don't have to stay at their lodge and eat their 5-star
How much does a
food.
day in Haynes cost?
I mean, you can have a great day in Haynes for $1,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
Like,
say Valdez. Well,
best day
most
of your life.
operators, yeah, is
I
more
could-
expensive. Than
I
that.
could say you could have the best day of your life for $1,000, and
Yeah.
chances are you wouldn't even spend that much because it's probably gonna be cloudy by the time you like get halfway to that point.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, man, when it's like, it's really, people are like, you'd spend $1,000 in a day to go heli skiing, but like, why is it worth it? What like makes it worth it? Because it's like people can't imagine, a lot of them. You know, they have a hard enough time buying a lift ticket for more than $100. How can you justify $1,000 for a day of skiing or snowboarding?
I don't know. Just once you've just tasted powder on that level, or the terrain, or ridden that kind of stuff, it's just something that sticks with you. You can't stop thinking about it. And maybe that's a curse, but it's just the pinnacle of being alive is riding that terrain. I think like there's nothing I've ever experienced that's greater feeling than that. And I'm not into hard drugs, but I imagine that's probably a similar feeling to what some of that stuff provides.
Okay. So let's back up for a second. Like, tell me what like a typical day of being a professional photographer is like. Like, what time do you get up? What are you doing? Are you just run me through a day being a photographer?
Well, for me, I'm traveling because I don't really shoot much from home here. Maybe in the summer, we got Mount Hood up the road, but Northwest, at least the Oregon side, isn't the best for shooting. So I'm usually on the road. So, in which case it's kind of nice because you get away at home, you're away from home and there's no distractions. So yeah, everyone on the trips now, anyone who's still in the game is pretty much a professional. That goes for the riders too, you know, like I was saying, budgets aren't what they used to be, and you kind of have to make the most of your time out there and really come home with shots. So we're not out late partying or anything. We're up, we're watching the weather. We're trying to be productive in the day. So, you know, it really depends if we're in Whistler's probably the most taxing because the weather's so unpredictable. You really have to get out there and see it for yourself to know what it's going to be. So every day you have to kind of get up around 5 and just check the weather and, you know, commit to the day or not, and head to the trailhead and it's still looking good, unload the sled and go up like that. But, you know, that's the hardest time, but that's really only like a month of the year that I might be up in that area when the snow and the light are good. It's, you know, end of February, most of March are good.
So you have to have a pickup truck too and drive your sled from Oregon to Whistler?
Yeah, I have a truck actually. If you can see, I have 2 of them outside. They're matching.
Oh wow! Looks like you got a camper too.
Yes, I do. But anyway, and then if we're maybe like on another like a city trip, which we do a lot early season to go out and shoot like rails and things like that. Sometimes those aren't really, well, actually rarely are they ever early mornings because you're usually up pretty late trying to like get into a place after the business is closed and light it up and go undetected and get your shots and leave before the sun comes up the next day. So it's kind of like the complete opposite schedule. So it's really just pretty much dictated on the terrain you're trying to shoot and things like that.
How much equipment are you bringing with you?
Well, if I'm traveling for a street trip, there's quite a bit of equipment because we're using a lot of lighting. And then I feel like the backcountry stuff, it's maybe not quite as much equipment, but maybe I'm bringing like longer lenses to like
more lenses.
Yeah, or just like, you know, bigger telephoto lens to shoot like at a greater distance. And maybe I'm bringing like snowshoes or, you know, things that are going to take up space in the bag, but less camera equipment per se, because when it's that type of riding, you want to really limit to what you just really need to be out there because of the weight factor and being able to be mobile.
Yeah, you got to carry it all on your back, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
So what kind of camera equipment do you use? Are you like a Canon guy, a Sony guy? I know there's Sony guys now, where it was only Nikon and Canon before.
Really? Who's a Sony guy? I've yet to meet one.
I think that the people are starting to shoot the A7 III.
Yeah, I just don't know anybody in snowboarding that shoots it yet.
Oh, maybe not for Trans World, but I think there are people shooting the A7 III. I can't say off the top of my head, but I've been talking to a few people, and they've been talking about that camera A7 IIIR is like something that's up and coming.
Yeah,
for lightweight, compact, it's like a little bit lighter than your traditional.
Yeah. I'm super familiar with mirrorless camera, which is what Sony is the whole new mirrorless thing, and they're supposed to be smaller that way. But in the end, I've seen some funny articles that if you look at the lenses, they kind of have to be designed for a camera that doesn't have a mirror, so they actually stick out a little farther. So you have like a bigger lens on a smaller body, and it's always kind of funny looking. But the biggest drawback of the mirrorless is the electronic viewfinder. So you're not actually looking through, you're looking at a video camera when you hold the camera up to your eye. You don't actually see it in real time. And if there's any sort of lag, then you've missed the shot.
Right.
So it has to be really spot on with that. But with that being said, I did have a kid this summer. I teach a photo workshop up at Mount Hood every year for one session through High Cascade. And I had this year we had our first kid show up with a mirrorless camera. And we were all
laughing at him. Making
No.
fun
We were actually, me and the other instructors, we were actually pretty excited to see how it was going to work, because we've all kind of wondered, like, is it finally time for this technology to be like accepted? And his photos were great. They were super sharp. He had no problems. And like, it was really impressive. I was like, this maybe could work. But I shoot Canon, and I have zero allegiance to Canon. I just started with them, and it's just.
Were you on Nikon before that?
No, I was never on Nikon, and I kind of feel like a lot of people have like a lot of pride in their gear, like, oh, I'm a Nikon guy or a Canon guy. I'm not really. It's just a tool, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gets the job done.
And they both kind of do the job.
Well, definitely they get the job done. And like, I try not to be a gearhead. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's not really about the gear. It's more like, it's kind of like if you were a carpenter, it's your hammer, you know?
Right.
So
but you know how to use, I mean, they're set
Yeah.
up slightly differently. So once you get comfortable on a Canon, it's kind of easy to stay with Canon versus
Exactly.
like switching to a new system where the buttons and, you know, dials are in different places.
Yeah. So it's funny though, because I'm actually really debating right now switching out of Canon and going over to Nikon, because I feel like I've done some research, and I've also been hanging out with some other associates who shoot Nikon, and Canon's asleep at the wheel as far as I'm concerned right now.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Hope you're paying attention.
Shots fired.
Yeah.
Canon doesn't do anything for the photography side. I shouldn't say anything. They just do the bare minimum to keep their photography dominance going. They kind of own the market in photography, but it's consumer photography. But Canon accidentally revolutionized the video industry when they came out with their 5D Mark II about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the whole video part of it wasn't even like, it was an afterthought. And they didn't really even realize that people were going to use this to make movies. And well, ever since then, that's all they've been trying to do is just like capitalize on this video market, because it really, like, everybody had to have one of those cameras at this time. So every time they come out with a new camera, it's got a new video feature, but it rarely ever has a new photo feature. So,
right. So it's more like, even though it's a still camera by design, it's actually a video camera that can also shoot photos.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. I've just been pretty disappointed in Canon. I'm at a point where I kind of need to upgrade some gear, and I've just been looking at.
Just go for Leica, and you could be like snobby about it all.
Yeah, but it's just not practical. So it's like, I don't know. I don't need. There's people like that. I don't need that kind of status. I just want stuff that makes good photos. I mean, obviously Leica does, but it would be insane to have Leica gear.
Yeah, $50,000 initial investment. Something like that.
Yeah, and it just doesn't perform the same way, to tell you the truth. It just doesn't shoot like, it's not really made to be an action camera. So
yeah, at
the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that you teach this photo workshop up in Mount Hood.
Yes, I do.
What are some of the things that you kind of like what are the fundamentals that you're teaching these kids at like a photo workshop? What are the key things to become a photographer?
Okay, so we break down the course over, we have about a week with the kids in the classroom, and we spend the first day going through gear, kind of like a bare minimum of what kind of gear you need to have to make this happen. And a lot of that has to do with
what's the bare minimum? Just a quick list.
Okay, so bare minimum, like, it's hard to say. Like, I don't like to get caught up in the megapixel game. So a few years ago, it was like, oh, you need to at least have an 8 megapixel camera. But now it's like your phone's triple that, so that's not really an issue. But I think for me, frames per second really matters. Mm-hmm. So I don't shoot a lot of sequences, but you need to have the option to be able to shoot sequence. So anything under under 7 frames a second. It looks a little choppy.
Okay.
So that's a factor. I tell my kids to, you need a camera that shoots at least 7 frames a second.
Okay.
I think it's important to buy gear that has some water resistance to it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, it's not going to necessarily be waterproof, but you're out in some pretty harsh elements. And
You might get sprayed with POW or something.
Yeah, or you might be shooting in the snow or even like the rain, and it's nice to not have to trip that you're going to ruin your camera gear and you have to go in, because I've gotten some great shots in the rain and I was pretty confident that I wasn't ruining my camera gear. I've never actually ruined camera gear from the elements. So I think that's important. And then we just talk about lenses and
how many lenses.
Well, it's just mostly like a focal range you're trying to cover. And so, a lot of consumer cameras that come out right now, they'll have a lens that's like, a 10 to 300, it's like, that's not a good lens. You want to cover that range, but you can't do it all in one lens. And so,
right.
So you start out on the wide end of things. You want, you always need a fisheye. That's super important.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might jump up to a 24 to 70 millimeter, and then a 70 to 200, which is, probably you're going to be your best lens, the one you use the most. And then if you're shooting a lot of backcountry, you'd probably get a fixed 300. So really 4 lenses you can get by on. And so we teach them about that kind of stuff, gear. And then we go into, we talk a lot about composition and what goes into what are things to consider.
It's like the rule of thirds.
Well, that's
like my basic go-to.
For sure. I actually in class I call it the rule of upper thirds, because that problem that a lot of kids who come to the workshop do is they put the rider in the lower part of the frame, and what happens is people move the camera. They're not comfortable with somebody snowboarding. They haven't framed it up as much, and so whenever a guy goes off the jump, they're always afraid they're going to miss him. So their natural reaction is to twitch the camera upwards.
And get him into the middle or below.
Yeah, middle or below. And so you have all this dead space above. So I call it the rule of upper thirds. But really, I try not to, as far as when we talk composition and stuff like that, I hate calling anything a rule. Because how boring would photography be if it was just like rules? It kind of goes back to what I was saying.
The art of 16ths.
I call them strong suggestions.
Okay.
So we talk about my strong suggestions, and rule of thirds definitely plays a big factor of like keeping things out of the middle. Keep
strong
watching the
suggestion of
headspace.
thirds.
And that's honestly like every year. I've been doing it for over 10 years. Every year, it's the hardest thing for people to overcome is just to like let the rider be at the top of the frame. It makes the photo look bigger. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm talking about errors. If you're shooting like carbs or sprays, stuff like that, there's always exceptions, but this is kind of like come to Mount Hood and there's people hitting jumps everywhere. So we kind of work on that kind of stuff. And then, we run them through lighting, which towards the end of the class, we do a sunset shoot every year at the end of the session, which is Mount Hood is probably one of the most magical places to be during like a sunset in the summer in mid-July. It's really incredible. We always get great light. And that's more on like obviously the technical end of things. And then, we try to run them through what actually some of the questions you were asking me before, like what it's, like to be a professional photographer, day-to-day stuff and gear outside of...
Do you teach them how to like sell photos to get jobs? Because I know it's a big part of it.
That's part of it too. Yeah, we do a day on business and a lot of it's just kind of theory based, because I'm not trying to tell them like,
here's how you take my job.
I don't mind if they take my job, to tell you the truth. I want to be challenged and pushed, and I'd love to do this forever, but I probably won't. And I want to make sure that when someone's doing it in the future, they're doing a really good job at it. That's kind of the whole like idea behind the workshop. But we talk to them. The key thing about selling photos is just trying to drive home this idea that photography should still be worth something. And I think that's the hardest part in 2018 and in recent times, is like photography has somehow become like this thing that businesses who've been doing, this for years, all of a sudden think that there's no such thing as a copyrighted photo anymore. It's like this whole sharing economy, I'm doing air quotes right now, that we live in. The world of like, oh, let me regram your thing. I'm, and help you out with the
they're
exposure.
helping you.
Yeah, this whole like exposure economy of like, oh, I'll give you some exposure so you can like what,
how do I
get more exposure?
How do I have dinner on exposure?
How do I pay the bills or pay for this camera or this outrageously expensive lift ticket?
Yeah,
with exposure. So it's like it's really just trying to drive home that whole idea to them that like, if you want to do this professionally, just realize it's, you have to like think of it as something of value, and you're going to have to walk away from some opportunities, from some, you might think it's really cool if, let's say, Burton wanted to regram my photo I took of Danny Davis at camp. That's so cool. But at the same time, number one, you're not helping out any of your fellow photographers if you have any a push to, if you want to be a professional someday, you're kind of like pushing us aside, because once you say no, they're just going to keep going to the next guy. I guess the idea is that eventually, we all kind of stand together in unity, and if you kind of have that mindset of like, okay, photography is worth something, even if you're going to send me a sticker per se, it just can't. There needs to be a transaction.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Okay, so it seems like that if smelling what you're stepping in, it becomes harder and harder. It's become harder and harder over 16 years to be a professional photographer.
Yeah, understatement. I mean, dude,
okay, so where's it going to be though? 10 years, 16 years from now, where's it going to be?
I don't know. I've hoped that people
3D holographic.
Who knows? I think it has less to do with new cameras presenting photos in a holographic way or such. It's just more the means of how it's consumed.
Yeah.
And so it used to be consumed on paper. Paper has a shelf life. Literally, you can put it on the shelf, and there was just more value in that. And so, people appreciate professional photography, but there's a viable, cheaper way of doing business now, and that's just getting, scanning the internet and poaching photography for free, or finding some up and coming shooter that will.
Who's the most egregious? The most egregious person who's just running over photography and going crazy, sharing stuff that's not theirs. Are there some big offenders out there? When
Instagram really started hitting, I don't know how long it's been now, maybe 5 years, it was crazy, because all these mainstream companies in the industry were starting to just regram, air quotes again, our photos. And when we complained to them, they were like, what do you mean? I just I saw it on my writer's page, or it was on the Transworld site. I just regrammed your photo. And I'm like, dude, this is crazy. This is you used to buy a photo from me to help promote your product. That's essentially what you're doing. And a lot of them would be in denial. They're like, dude, this is just Instagram. We're just trying to stoke out our community, our writers, and connect with them. And I'm like, this isn't a hobby. You're trying to sell widgets or whatever it is you sell. This is marketing. This is marketing. Quit trying to be ignorant to it and stuff like that. And so a lot of us who were shooting at the time, we kind of all banded together, and we're like, look, dude, have you seen this photo? So-and-so just posted your photo. Did you sell it to him? They're like, no. I'm like, and so we all stood up.
And you made a social media war against them and be like, did you see what they took my photo? And
well, we educated him, or I don't know, we re-educated him mostly is what we should be saying here. But, it was an effort, and there was definitely some ruffled feathers and all of that, but it doesn't happen anymore. I don't get my photos regrammed, and no one else really does, by companies in the industry. The industry people don't do that anymore. It's more the people on the outside, some new water company or some new weird footbed company will just come in and just take your photos, and it's not only are they just stealing from us, but they're promoting some writer whose livelihood is by endorsements.
So, and also that applies to Facebook, sharing, you don't want let's say a board company to share a photo of their team writer.
No, that's exactly
what it is. Yeah.
Social media, I should say. I use Instagram as the example because I feel like Facebook's just a place where you just go for political rants. But I guess there are photos on there still.
Do you want to make a political statement now? Is this an appropriate time for you to make your political views known?
I don't know. I feel like that should be its own broadcast, and I don't want to alienate anyone who's actually still listening at this point.
Yeah, good point. Hey folks, if you're tuning in to us still, please take a minute to go to Patreon.
Wait.
What?
Is there some question that they wouldn't still be tuning in?
Well, if they're still listening, they can go to patreon.com/the snowboard project.
But you're still staying still.
Still.
they
They might
not
have just
even
listened
made
to
it
the
this
first
far.
5 minutes. Yeah, they
Okay.
might not have made it this far. So.
Okay.
But I just want, if you're still listening, okay, if you're listening, go to patreon.com/the snowboard project, and we're going to count on you guys to support an independent voice in snowboarding media. It's how we're going to keep this thing advertising free and have a voice that is not affected by the advertisers. Cool. So where are you going to be in 10 years? I know that you own some real estate. You've diversified yourself into multiple things. Do you go back to graphic design? Do you I mean, what do? You become a motocross racer, race the Paris Dakar? What's next?
I don't know. I guess I should make a 10-year plan. I've never made plans like, you're supposed to in that regard. Things have all just kind of come together, but I
Get a new haircut, maybe?
I don't know. I've been running this one for a while, so
yeah,
I've had some good luck. But I notice your hair's looking pretty good these days.
I'm trying.
Yeah, maybe ask you about your barber.
It's actually my beard that's gone now. It turned all white, and so I started shaving.
Yeah,
I was like looking my age.
I think I love what I'm doing still. If I could still be doing it in 10 years, that'd be awesome. But I'm just gonna kind of roll with the punches and see what happens. I like you mentioned, I do have some other interests or just some backup plans. A lot of people are like, why don't you go shoot fashion or shoot this or that? I'm like, dude, I'm just not like into fashion. I'm into snowboarding, and that's like, hope it shows in my photos. I feel like it has from time to time that this is what I care about, and I just want to go out and be a schmuck in that world. So, I've done a bit of investment to try to kind of protect myself from having to go out and take photos of something that's whack that I don't even believe in. Try to make it cool.
Okay, last question. Top 3 snowboarding photos of all time. Yours or anyone else's? The top 3.
Okay. I mean, this is just off the top of my head, and I don't even know if I want to rank them, but I'll give you 3 photos that really stick in my mind. And it's the first comes to mind is Sean Sullivan photo of Mark Morissette, which is the cover of your magazine, or the magazine you were probably running at the time. Or were you there? Was that pre your time?
I think it was right around the time I got there. I know which photo you're talking about.
Yeah, so Snowboarder magazine, Mark Morissette, busting through the trees, amazing style. Probably my favorite photo.
Just no grab, just ollie.
Yeah, so nice. And then there's
pressed up.
Same era, pretty much, and was a John Foster photo of Jamie Lynn frontside 360, maybe black. I think it's black and white photo over a little road gap in Norway. That was a very impactful photo.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I guess more recent times, Frode had a photo of Nicholas Mueller stalefish grab shot with some light on a snowy day. Stalefish. I think it was maybe the cover of the Absinthe movie that year. Ever Since. I could be saying totally wrong. Anyway, that photo really stuck with me. It's a very iconic photo. It's just beautiful. Just definitely represented like snowboarding in that era to me. So those are off the top of my head.
Okay,
There's
what's your
thousands.
favorite that I know there's thousands, but like what's your favorite photo that you shot for whatever reason?
Oh man, no way.
No way.
I don't
Every photo I shoot is a piece of art. It's like,
and not by that by any means. I just feel like, I don't know. I would be interested if you talk to other photographers if they can answer that question, because it's a question a lot of people seem to think that every photographer should have an answer for, and maybe they do, but I've never had that answer. And I mean,
asked D Stone that question. He's like, he doesn't shoot good photos. I'm just kidding.
I can tell you my favorite East Stone photo.
Okay, what's your favorite East Stone photo?
Favorite East Stone photo is the photo of Mark Frank in, I think it was in Japan. It looked like it was in a little rock quarry, front side 180, like jacket
it's funny
open,
how you can visualize like the scene, the whole thing. Like a good photo, it's like a picture's worth 1,000 words, and it's maybe worth more than 1,000 words because it brings you to a moment in time where there was a whole surrounding scene.
For sure.
Good photo is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope we don't lose that, like the impact photos have, like what you just described. And I don't know, maybe we're just from another generation, and I don't know how much impact looking at a photo on your phone for 30 seconds before you swipe to the next one is going to, like,
Yeah, you don't get it in like a scale where you can actually look into the details of what's happening in the background, and it's painting this like picture.
Yeah.
Right? A whole picture, not just like a piece of action in the air that's decently lit and in focus.
For sure. And then it leaves it to your imagination to kind of imagine what happened before, what happened after, or what it's like at that mountain or like that day. It's just so much to be like, it just lets the mind, it kind of just sparks the imagination looking at something like that.
Right. And like a video kind of feeds you this story, right? You're forced to like pay attention to what's happening in the video, the way it's edited or whatever. But a photo gives you the freedom to read into it like you're reading a book, and you have to paint the picture in your head of what was happening or what you imagine was going on in that. And I think that's kind of the difference between a still image, at least that you can see, but beyond like a 4 or 5 inch screen on your phone, and like, you know, a magazine.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of one of the problems that you're dealing with.
And it was also just like, I mean, sure, you could always turn the page in the magazine, but I feel like you just didn't rifle through a magazine like, whoa, like you rifle through the Instagram feed. You know what I mean? You're just like, swipe.
And you know, if you log in like 2 minutes later, it's going to be a whole new feed almost.
Exactly.
Right?
And
yeah.
so even if it was a photo you liked, like how would you ever even go find it again? And like,
there's a couple things though, like the Stale backside 3 to tail wheelie and the switchback 5 to method that I must have watched those little video clips like hundreds of times. They were so sick, you know. Do you find yourself doing that?
Oh yeah, I do that still, like for sure. I don't hate video. I hope that you don't think I'm. Like
that was the impression that I had. That you just hate video.
No. I don't hate it. I don't watch a lot of snowboard movies. Or you know what? Actually, I didn't used to watch a lot of snowboard movies. Now there's not that many left, so I guess I watch most of them. But when there was 20, I'd maybe watch 5. Now there's 5, and I still watch 5. So I guess I do watch them in that sense. But I see the clips for sure. The Stale thing was insane, and the other one that came out pre-Olympics that everyone was flipping out on was that
Switchback 5 to method, like tour gear.
100 times watch that.
Yeah. Okay. So let me run this by you. So I have this theory. I proposed it like 5 years ago, where it's like we go to like backside 1800 mute, right? And it's like, well, it's to me that's kind of uninteresting and doesn't relate. So my idea was, and I was watching Sean White and I think Kubo maybe did like a frontside 5 to method, and Sean White did a frontside 5 with a stale fish in the middle where he kind of hangs upside down.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that is so sick.
Right? But my idea was like combination tricks. Like if you take 2 separate tricks and combine them together, it makes some kind of new trick that's better than the sum of its parts. So like the switch backside 5 to method that Tour Gear did, or like a backside 3 to wheelie, right? But it's like, to me, that's just more authentic to being an artist on snow than like, okay, I added a 180. And, Whitey's line is like, okay, that's just repetition. You add a 180, that's just repetition. How do you feel about that? What direction do you think like the progression of the sport's going to go in?
Well, the tricks you mentioned are all tricks that have stood out more than anything to me in recent times. Like they're insane. I do feel a little weird when you start to like, I don't know, make it into a formula of like, okay, everybody, we're going to judge you on 2 tricks put together. I kind of feel like the way those tricks came together was like a natural.
Sure, it was definitely natural. I'm just trying to like, I just think that we're going to get to the point of catastrophic injuries when you're just spinning until you have a fraction of a second to spot your landing and spin till you hit, and people are going to get really hurt. And it's also just not creative to me. And so whether it's 2 or 3 tricks or just 2 or 3 things or whatever, or 5 things.
I know you're just quantifying it you're just kind of defining it, in which I understand you have to do because, the world you come from, like the competitive side of things, are going to have to put parameters around it. But I always feel weird when it's like, you gotta do this, and I just love like people's freedom of expression to do their own thing. And I feel like when Torger did that, it was just like, it was natural, like to come around like that. And then, oh my God, he threw that tweak. It was so sick. So anyway, but what you're saying, your overall, the bigger point for sure. I would love to see that. It would be so amazing.
I would just like to see it more artistic. And how do you make it in a way that's like more challenging? And so that's the way the reason I quantify it like that is because I feel like if you can quantify it, then you can justify giving it a score. Like you said, I have a competition background, but also photography as well. And it's like, you can't really take a good single photo of a backside 1800 or a triple, right? A 14 triple, right? And that was like, I mean, I did all these contests last year, and it was like every single person had a 14 triple. And after a while, it was kind of like, you know, if they drop in and I can call the trick while they're still in the in run, but pre-wind up or anything, and I know what they're going to do, it's kind of like, okay, it's lost a little bit of its luster.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree. And it's crazy because now half pipe riding is more interesting to me now to see what the sequence of tricks that they choose to do, because it's less like predictable.
It's the sequence of tricks, not the trick itself that matters.
Well, don't you feel like that in half pipe riding? People
Kind
say
of.
like they really do give a lot of credence to like, oh, he dropped in with a double or whatever, and they're like, if you messed up on that, your whole run's over. It's higher risk. Things like that.
You
I
should
thought that was
announce
cool.
contests. You'd be good at that.
Well, I feel like that's not my words. I feel like I've heard that spoken. Maybe you're not listening to other people announcing because you're busy announcing as well. But
yeah,
you know,
no, I do. I'm just talking shit.
Yeah. But anyway, so I would love to see it. Something needs to change, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Does it really matter?
I just think that it becomes less interesting. The more it progresses, the less interesting it becomes to some degree.
I mean, the risk of injury side of it, for sure. That you make a great point in that, and I feel the same way. And we got in a huge argument this year with a rider who was a street kid about what's the most dangerous element in snowboarding, like who's doing the most dangerous, life-threatening stuff. And I said it's the people who ride half pipe in the Olympics are the ones who are putting themselves at the most risk, because they go out every day, they ride those rock solid pipes, they have to do
20-foot airs back to back to back to back.
Exactly.
With a fraction of a second
maybe,
spuckling. You could be right.
Maybe they would do 20 runs a day, but if you're not dead on some of those airs, if you clip the lip and hit your head like you're saying, the potential for that is like, dude, and I mean, I'm not
life-altering.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take away anything from, you know, people riding in the backcountry. Avalanches are always a factor, but you kind of put yourself in that element.
Risk.
Yeah,
you mitigate that before you drop in.
Yeah.
You should know what the chances are. You should have like an idea. And anything can happen, sure, but you're kind of mitigating that risk before you even drop in.
Yeah, for sure.
With the pipe, it's like it could happen like that.
For sure. You go to Alaska, what do you ride? 3 hairball lines in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because of things just
if I'm
lining
lucky,
up.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm old too.
Well, even like if you're filming, you know, it's like even the top riders, it's like, yeah, they'll ride a lot of intermediate lines that look really sick, but they're not like going to die on them. I mean, I guess an avalanche could take them out, but maybe if on a good trip, they put themselves into like a heartbeat through the mouth or through the chest situation, you know, 2 or 3 times, whereas like, dude, you ride the pipe, and if you want to be on the top level guys, top 5, top 10 guys in the world, you're doing that practice run 20 times a day on that. And if you're not just on it at 1 split second, it could be over. And I think it's the gnarliest.
And then you got to learn a new trick or 2 new tricks or 3 new tricks to be in the Olympic year or whatever. You know, it's pretty gnarly. What about street rails? How like where do you put that? Where does that fit in? Like between like, let's say, pipe is definitely more dangerous in backcountry, like big mountain, let's say. Where does like slope style and street fit into that?
Well, it's the street, and that was the argument of the rider. Was just kind of like, whatever, the stuff we do, it's so gnarly, like jump on this rail and there's concrete everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, but it's just like, rarely could you die. There's, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I hate to be morbid, but like, the first fatality, I feel like, is most likely going to be in the pipe.
I'm just going to knock on wood for that.
I mean,
real talk, though. It is kind of real talk. I mean, I look at what they do now in the pipe, and it's like,
I mean,
1 fraction of a second, one little departure of the lip just slightly off, and man, it could go so wrong. And like with Kevin Pierce, we saw what happened there, and that was like a catastrophic head injury. But that was like, what, 6 years ago in progression? It's like now they go bigger, they spin way harder. Mm-hmm. It's just going gnarlier and gnarlier.
For sure. Like some of even like the crashes Sean's had where he's walked away from, he could easily have just snapped his neck off. The impact is insane. So anyway, I do like, dude, again, not to take anything away from the other things the guys are doing in the street, for sure. It's really gnarly. I have nothing but respect for guys that are going to, you know, you land on concrete. Of course that hurts. You're not going to die.
Right, you're going to break a leg or something.
I mean, you could hit your head, of course, but it's just like chances are you're going to get out of it. And then with, I don't know, I guess with slope, I don't feel like that's I don't see the risk factor as high as in that. I probably see that as the least, as far as like the guys
below the big mountain stuff. Too.
Yeah, for sure. Because the big mountain, avalanche is a factor,
Yeah.
For the mountain.
Although
is the
that crash
factor.
McMorris took a couple of years ago, that was pretty brutal. Did you see that one? Where he broke his femur, I think. It was, he like caught sideways in the landing.
Yeah, he caught a
anything
weird
can happen.
edge, but that
Anything
was like,
can happen,
I mean,
right?
I feel like that was more like the conditions too. Like
Yeah.
it was on scaffolding, right?
I think it was.
He could have
yeah.
caught like a board that had lifted up. I don't know. It was really strange the way he went down. I mean, it was also like, Seve went down crazy hard at the X Games this year too, like
Yeah.
where he was riding away and just heel edge and caught. So yeah, of course.
Anything can happen.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure. But like, yeah, I mean, I definitely.
So what do you do? Like let's go to a positive note to end it, because I don't want to end right there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like what you enjoy in snowboarding when you don't have a camera bag, when you're just going out. What's a day like an awesome day for just you snowboarding?
Well, not so much about tricks anymore. So just the board usually stays on the ground. But no, I like to ride powder. I mean, I think that's a pretty obvious statement from anyone in our age group that you kind of pick your battles wisely. So
Do you ever get to leave your camera home in Alaska? Or do you
I
feel
wouldn't
guilty
leave it.
about
I
it?
wouldn't leave it at home. That would be gross negligence.
Crazy talk.
Well, like, dude, it takes a lot to actually be in the helicopter in Alaska. A lot of things, stars lined up. You know what I mean? And you're spending big money, and everyone else is too. So I wouldn't leave home. But I've certainly left my camera in the helicopter for a run.
Yeah.
So that happens every year for sure.
Yeah.
So, and I've had riders, even like at the end of the day, they're like, dude, let me take your pack. And I'll get to take the ride down.
It sucks to be you.
Yeah, and I'm like, thank you. But no, there's always some rider who like will take my pack for me. And like they even offer it up. So, and that's always awesome. So I get runs like that for sure. But I like to ride powder. Like, surprise, surprise.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much, Andy. I think that was a cool conversation. I learned a lot about your perspective on things. And
yeah, any surprises?
You didn't name as many names as I thought you might.
Yeah, we'll do part 2 in a few years.
Okay. Maybe not even in a couple of years. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm doing these 5 days a week, so we'll see. We'll see how many. I didn't tell you that before, did I? That's top secret.
On behalf of Mark Sullivan and the Beeve, thanks for listening to the Snowboard Project. Remember, ride fast, take chances, dream big, and take action. And for God's sake, don't be a... Don't forget to support advertising-free snowboarding media at patreon.com. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.